Hey guys, we're going to take a look at another CMS and website design platform today that is better than WordPress, I would assert. So let's take a look at Duda. And it is, you can find this at duda.co. We will put a link down in the description. But it's essentially it's a very simple CMS it's going to allow you to design your site a lot faster than you could with many other products. It's right up there with products like Squarespace and Wix and that type of thing. But it just has some other features and things that those don't have as well. But it is super easy to do website design in it, set up a blog, and even do some simple e-commerce. So we're going to take a look at how you do that real quick. So you can go to Duda's website, click on the Let's Build a Website link, and you go through this process. I'm not going to go through all of that, but I will say that from a pricing perspective, Duda is a little bit cheaper than something like Shopify or something like that, which is just for e-commerce. But you can get a basic one site for $19 a month. Now that is more expensive than just hosting some of the cheap, like off-the-shelf hosting for a WordPress site, but this includes a lot of the other stuff that a typical WordPress site wouldn't include. You're not buying plugins, you're not buying themes, you're not having to manage all those plugins, you're not doing an SSL, you're not doing all of that kind of stuff. So these prices are, with that in mind, are kind of relatively cheap, particularly if you're doing multiple sites. So if you're a small agency or something like that, and you're doing a lot of different websites for people, it is relatively inexpensive. So let's jump into the website designer. I'm going to go in and create a new site. And it does let you choose from a number of free templates. And so, depending on your needs, these templates can be really good for just getting going, right? Like, don't get caught up on the pictures, because obviously you're going to want to change those out for your own imagery and photos. But really, what is the overall look and feel of the site? Are you looking for something that's one page? Are you looking for something that's multiple pages? Is it something that, you really are, it's just a portfolio site? Or is it something that you really want to highlight your services, all of that kind of stuff? And so they have them broken down into different types of businesses: travel, lifestyle, portfolio, just a blog, and you can obviously do even a blank one. So let's take a look at just one that is out of the box, just so that you can get an idea. Let's see here. Let's do a flex theme, and I'll do this one. And we're just going to put in test site. And that will start loading your site. And you don't start paying for these until you're actually going to publish them. So, and even then, we're going to have a link below that it brings you, I think it's a 14-day free or something like that, so you can test it and whatnot. So click to edit in flex mode. Flex just means that it gives you additional ability to change the layout and stuff like that. All right, so you can see we're in the basic site menu here. This is all of the different sections that are pre-built. And all you have to do is really just go into these sections and change them how you want them. So you can change the font, you can change the size, you can change, obviously, the information. So, you can even have the AI assistant help design content for you if you want it. You have a lot of flexibility with alignment and spacing. So for instance, say, I wanted to click on this and, on this section here, and I can do different spacing with it. So say I don't want as much spacing at the top, I can adjust that and it will move those around, right? So you can also do like the head here and change that. You can also plug in whether it's pixels or percentage, viewport height, viewport width. That gives you a lot of flexibility when you want it to be responsive. you can change your buttons. So there's button styles. You can go ahead and change the backgrounds, the layout, the text, the links, all of that kind of stuff. So you can have more choices here to copy it. If you want to copy that for somewhere else, throw it away. All sorts of flexibility. So we're going to change the content. So in this one, we'll say like, start here and choose what page it goes to. You can choose a web address, a pop-up, or even just an email, click to call. So if this is something you just want people to call, say it's a landing page that you're working on. So there's a lot of flexibility about where and how you design these. Okay, we can design this button and we can look at the design options. So we can say like, you know what, I don't like this square. I want to add a corner radius to this. And I want it to be different colors. So if I choose a different color, maybe I want it to be that color by default, and then the hover color to be black. And so you can see that adds the interaction very easily. So you can then go into and start editing different parts of your site. So if you want to add a different logo, you can do that here. You can replace it. You can link it to a specific page. You can add alt text. The nice little AI alt text generator is nice. Gives you at least something to work with. You can have a different image on hover. So that gives you a lot of flexibility with the layout and the design. You can add borders and interaction. So if somebody hovers, it can zoom out or float or whatever. So you can see that now has an interaction when on hover. So if we click off of this, you can see just by a few clicks, I can change that. Since we changed the button down below, you can also say, hey, no, I want some radius on this too. So let's look at some more design options, and I'm going to make that a little more curved. So again, a lot of flexibility here for working in these themes and kind of making them your own. You can change the images where this will put default images in for these themes, obviously, and you don't want to use those. So obviously you can add your own, and they do have access to free images, premium images that you can, for stock photography, or obviously you can upload them. So, which is what we would recommend, uploading your own images, but then you can start to personalize this so that it has your images and your look and feel, your links, your copy. Again, you can go in here and just easily change this copy and even the sizes and stuff like that. So that's how you work with a theme. Super easy. Let's show you some more of what's the part of the layout over here. So there's the overall site theme. So since we selected a theme, we can go in and change these. If you did not select a theme, you could go in at this point and start creating site-wide theme options. So what's your default font? What's your default colors? What are your default sizes and links and all that kind of stuff? And that's where you can set that up, the buttons and whatnot. So you can go through and if you do use a theme, you can start to change that. So you can change the default headlines, and I can say, you know what, I don't like that. Let's go with, rubato or something. Okay. And you can see that did that up here. Change that to rubato up here instead of the default that they had in there. That way you don't have to do that throughout the whole site. You don't have to go into every place where that specific H1 element or whatever it is. Yeah, H1. You don't have to go in and change that for each page. If you change it at the theme level, it will change it throughout the site. Okay. Where you'll be working a lot is in this pages section. And you can add pages and you can rearrange them. And so where this is handy is you see the built-in navigation up here. If I wanted, for instance, to switch these two, I can do that. And so now they're switched up here in the menu. If I wanted to nest something, I can just drag it in, and now it's nested, and we'll do a drop down under there, or I can drag it out if I don't want it to be a nest. So That way you can have a lot of control over the pages. You can add a page. And this is where you can, again, use some pre-built pages that you can then modify, which speeds up the whole design process a lot, right? You're not creating all of these from scratch. You can start with just an empty page, and we'll show you that in a minute. You can start with something that's our services or contact us or landing page, project page, portfolio, and you can have dynamic pages like, for instance, that pull from a database of information or a spreadsheet of information. So for team members, for instance, you can have upload a spreadsheet of information or maintain dynamic information in Duda that you can just, it will dynamically create pages for you and keep that updated as you update the information. So if you have a lot of new people joining, or if you're a real estate broker, or you have a menu items and the prices change all the time, you can do that as dynamic pages. And we will go into that in more depth in the future, but just realize that that's possible. So you can create, say for instance, a contact page, add that, and now you can start to work with that design to make it how you want it. So you can go in here, you can change the form, you can add fields, you can take fields away, you can choose what they do, where they go, all of that kind of stuff. You can choose the submission, where it's being submitted to, the notification that people will get, what happens after they submit a contact form, and then you can add tracking and whatnot. You can also do integrations with a couple of the biggest integrations that you need. So for instance, if people are submitting information, they can do it into Google Sheets automatically, so that way it's stored for you. But if you have like MailChimp or Zapier or anything like that, Constant Contact, you can have it update those accounts automatically. So that is creating pages. And like I said, you can move them around. Obviously, we don't need to contact us pages, so I can choose to delete it. On the pages themselves, you can go in and have a bunch of control over the information that's on these pages. So the URL, so that if I want to take the hyphen out of there and just have contact, I can do that. I can also have, use the AI assistant to help do meta tags. Page titles, you can actually do the page title, contact us, then the name of your company. And that's what Google will see. That's what people will see in the search engine listings. And then you could add a meta description where you say, what's your business name, blah, 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 and it will build that meta description for you. And that's the information you see in the search engine results. So this is all stuff for Google. You can set the page access so that this is protected. So if your site is live, you can have it be password protected, or you can have it just be for client approvals, that kind of thing, while you're waiting for that, or executive approvals. So you can set the page access, make it password protected. And then the header HTML, this is if you're adding specific tracking to this page or code to this page. You would want to add Google Analytics to each of these pages like this, or some other tag. We wouldn't recommend that. But if there is something that you need just on a specific page, say like on a contact page, you have like a pop-up or something like that for chat or something like that. So that's where you would do that if you need to. And so that's for each of these pages. You can also hide these pages so that you can say, I don't want to show this on publicly, or maybe I don't want this page to be on mobile or desktop, whatever that option is. So, okay, so let's go back to the homepage real quick. Talking about designing for mobile, one of the things you can do is, obviously we're in desktop mode right now, but you can also see how this is going to look on tablet, for instance, and then on mobile. And so if there's something that you don't like how it's laying out or working on mobile, you can change it in here, and then it won't change it on the desktop. So if you want to change like the font size in mobile, you can do that to make it so that it's a bit more responsive or something. So maybe we want to make that a little bit smaller. Maybe the button needs to be smaller. We can do that, and then it will be responsive. So we can go back and look at the desktop, and we can see that the headline is still the same, but it was changed on mobile. So That way you can tweak your designs, make sure they're super responsive. We always recommend that you design, in many cases for most audiences, for mobile first, because for most industries, a lot of people are viewing your website first on mobile rather than on desktop. That's not always the case, so it's good to know in your analytics if that is the case, but that's something to keep an eye on, because most people tend to look at the desktop, don't think about the mobile, and then the site looks completely different on their mobile. All right, so pages, you can do those. So let's add another page. Actually, let's add another section. I'll show you how that works. So you can see there's sections on this site. So there's the header section that was the default menu, navigation right here. There's this flex section. You can add a section right here. So click on this, and I'm gonna add a design section. And this gives you a lot of easy to choose from pre-made designs depending on what you're looking for. So these are the flex sections. These are if you want to stick with the flex design, which just gives you a little bit more ability to align things and that kind of thing. Or you can just go to some of their other ones that we don't have that option because this is a flex site. So, but like say I wanted to do an insert like this. I can save that. And then I can go through and customize it because, some of the titles are different. I can make sure that the images are different, where the links are going, that kind of stuff. But this just speeds up this whole process of adding sections to the site. So, potentially like maybe I go down to the bottom here. They have a sign up form. Let's do something that's empty. And then I can add widgets. So the widgets are another thing that you can drag and drop into the site so that if you have different columns in the site and that kind of stuff. So say I wanted to put an image in here, I can do that. I can just choose an image. And then if I wanted to put, say a video over here, I could do that. And then I could do a custom video that I put the information in there and it would be in that section. So the widgets are super easy to add different elements to the page. So buttons, contact forms, all of that kind of stuff. So say, I didn't want this here. Say I wanted another section. So I can get rid of this section and say I want to add something different. So I want to go in and add a section. And I just want to drop in a specific widget. Maybe it is a map or a contact form. And so that goes in there and I can put all of the different information, design it differently, use the different custom designs for it. Maybe I want it black and white. And now I have that widget in that row on the homepage without having to do a lot of work. So if you wanted to do a page that is blank, you can do that. So I can do an empty page. I would change the title name there, obviously. There are, because we're in a theme, it has certain things built into it, like the footer. But the elements of the page up here are different, right? So we can add what we want. So we can say, hey, let's do an empty one. And we want just an image in there for whatever reason. And we could do that. We could add an image and then we can change the size of it. Border, corner radius, say we wanted to add corner radiuses to it. We can do that. And we can adjust the sizing. Of this section, so we could bring these together and we can get rid of this row since it's kind of extraneous. So you can see we can easily throw in these widgets and then design them if we want to. We can add the alt text to him eating sushi at a table, eating sushi with chopsticks. And And then we could even add an image on hover if we wanted to do that. We can change the layouts, the style, the animation. So when somebody comes to the site, they first come to the page, or if they scroll down, we can add, a bounce, a rotate, roll, slide, fade. So it could get silly if you wanted it to. Elements can do whatever animation you want from that list. Let's edit the design. So instead of do a fade in. Okay. So there's a lot of flexibility there to get creative. Obviously that didn't look great on this one, but some other things that you should be aware of is aside from the widgets, which I mentioned, there's a lot of them in here that are extremely useful. It gives you a lot of flexibility to, build tables or have multiple columns into a section, that kind of stuff. Media sliders, that type of thing. There are apps that you can add on from the marketplace in here that has like review integration from Google. So if you want to pull in your Google reviews, there's things like that. We won't get into a lot of that today, but you can put some of those through via the widgets. When you're setting up your site, you can add a lot of your business info in here so that this will help set it up for your contact information, that kind of stuff, and set all the default information in here that's kind of site-wide. So whenever there's, for instance, a link to Facebook, it would have the same link, or to X or to Instagram, that kind of thing, so that then you can have your business hours, that kind of stuff, and you can actually have that submitted to Google Business Network. So you can add your business tags, like about us, that kind of stuff. So you can set information that's kind of site-wide in here, okay? You can add membership to your site if you choose. There's blogs. And so the blogging on here is kind of simplistic. It's kind of what you think it would be. This is the default blog. So you can see that there's a way to edit these and kind of see the list. You can add your blog name. You can then also choose kind of what it looks like. And you can edit the layout of the blog. So this will show like what the various blogs look like. So it would have the post title up here. You can add other content up here. So it has, for instance, the author, publishing date, and you can remove those or keep those if you don't want those. You can choose what the fonts are of the various parts, whether people can leave comments, that kind of stuff, and then related blog posts and that kind of thing. So this would give you the overall look of the layout of your blogs. You can go in and edit individual blogs that may already be up there. Okay. So you can go in and edit the content. It's not super sophisticated editing on the blogs. So there's not a lot of different layouts and stuff like that that you can do super easily. If you want to add a new blog, it's, you add your post title, choose your author. You can add authors, you choose your main image. So let's say it's this one. That's going to be the header then of the blog. Test title. And then it gives you this kind of pre-made area. So you can choose to remove the image. You can change the font headings, the text, add your blog text here. One thing that you have to be aware of on this is it's not super easy to embed different images and stuff in the content itself. So you actually have to create new text areas. So if I wanted to put an image in here, right, that's embedded in the blog, I could do that. But then I would have to drag another, text block widget here to do the next paragraph of the blog. And so on and so forth. As you're building out the blog, you just, you do paragraphs in there. And then for, say I wanted to put in a video, I could do that here. And I could add a video that's embedded in the blog layout. And then I'd have to add another text box underneath that. So you get the idea. It's a little clunky the way the layout is. It's not the only CMS that does it that way, but it would be nicer if you could just embed videos and other content directly into the blog a little more easily. But once that's done, you can click done. And you see that we've got the test stuff in there. We can then also set up the SEO, so we can change the post title if we want. We can change the author. We can add alt text. We can add a post description, and so you can choose whether that post description shows up. And then you can add tags. Like most blogging platforms, you can add content tags that you can then develop other pages on the site that will filter those by the content tag, or you can add links on the blog to add as filters so that you can show different types of blogs. Blog settings, you can import posts from other platforms. So relatively simple and easy. It's not super difficult to do. There are, like I said, apps in here that you can connect. So there's MailChimp connector, HubSpot. And so there's a number of different types of apps, some of which are free, some of which are paid. So, there's a WhatsApp and chat buttons. There's a free plan in there, connectors, CRMs, privacy, payment gateways. There's SEO plugins, all of that kind of stuff. So this is growing. This is an area that's growing. If you just have a simple site, you probably won't need these. But that is available. And then there's different site settings that you can do as well. So when you're ready to add a site domain, when you're ready to publish it, you can do that here. Until then, it's a Duda domain, site SSL. This comes with it, but when you're publishing your site, you're going to want to generate a certificate. There's Google tools to allow you to add Tag Manager and Google Analytics to this, which we highly recommend doing both of those. If you have Tag Manager implemented on the site, you don't need to add the Google GA4 tag. You can do that through GTM. I actually recommend doing it that way. It gives you a lot more control. You can back up your site. You can do your redirects. So this is especially important if you're deleting pages that were on here. You want to redirect those to another page. That way Google transfers its credit for that page that may have come for SEO. And this is particularly important if you're migrating your site. So if you're coming from another CMS or another platform, whatever that is, index all of your old URLs and make sure that they're pointing to the right ones here, because the taxonomy of the URLs might be different in your new site than they were in your old. So you want to make sure that you don't lose credit for those, and that customers that might be clicking on links or something like that aren't getting 404 errors. So this is where you do that. And then you can customize your 404 page and that kind of stuff. So as you can see, this is pretty simple. You can preview the site and see what everything looks like to make sure everything looks okay. And you can also, if you decided to, you can go back to the editor here and you can actually create a custom navigation. So this is going to be auto generating this, right? So every page that you put on here is going to get added to your navigation unless you tell it to hide it, or unless you create a custom navigation. So what you can do, you can actually go through and create a custom navigation. One thing we didn't talk about is pop-ups. I wouldn't go crazy with these. I find them pretty annoying on most sites that I go to. But you can create pop-ups. You can create a welcome video, contact us, and various promotions or things that you want people to be aware of. It could be a newsletter sign up, that kind of stuff. And you can create that on here. So you can create a newsletter sign up, add that pop-up, and then you can create business rules around it and stuff like that. So on this pop-up, I can say the size, the background, the look, whatever. I can create those designs. There are some business settings that you can add to that as well. So like when they see it and that kind of stuff. We won't go too much into that. And then when you're ready just delete this. When you're ready to actually, so you've gone through, you've gotten all the approvals and whatnot on your site. You can share this with other team members, so you can add team members to this. You can add clients. They can actually leave comments. So if they have a comment about the design, you can click on it and say, I don't like this picture. And that way you can be collaborative about the site design, and you can, see that people are leaving comments. You can resolve it. Like I said, you can create clients, you can add team members, and that will help with the whole process of designing your site. Once that's all done, if you're ready to publish, you just click on this publish. You would go through the domain selection process and that kind of stuff. You can either buy your domain through these guys, or if you have an existing domain, you can do that. And then it's good to go. It'll take a little bit of time before the SSL will actually generate and that kind of thing, but it's super easy from there. Now, when you want to come back in and say your site is published and you want to make changes, you just go to the page that you want to make changes to, or if you want to add a new blog, that kind of thing, you can do that. You can go in here and make those changes, and then republish. And so once that publishes, once you republish that, it is going to re-render the site, and those changes will be instant. So hope that was helpful, guys. This is a quick view of Duda. There's more you can do. There's more finessing you can do with the design, and we may go into that later. Let me know if you'd like to see more about the Duda platform and how we can develop sites and get more technical with it. Some of the customization that you can do. It's pretty WYSIWYG in how you interact with it. So there's not any HTML that you have to worry about, that kind of stuff. So, much like other sites like Wix and Squarespace and stuff like that. What this does, though, is it does have some of the dynamic stuff that you can do right out of the gate. And if you have multiple landing pages that you need to do, or multiple clients, if you're a small agency, you can start producing at scale pretty quickly, because you can copy sites, you can copy pages, you can do all of that really quickly. So let me know if this was helpful. Let me know if you'd like to see more about Duda. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, and we will see you later. Have a good one.